You seem bothered by something.
How did we get here?
A CDMP TV and film presentation from Crazy D, the mind who brings you the Black Ice Chronicles, the Females DVD, and Situations DVD, brings you The Shifter. It's Halloween night at Crazy D's, and a pesky vamp is out for blood. Beware of the Shifter.
That's it. You gotta go beat it damn scram, man. Damn.
Why don't you be a doll and find me a place to change? I need a place to change my clothes before I go.
What? Don't try to hold me on the phone.
D! You been holding out on me?
No, I was just about to stop and help. You know I help the crackheads, D.
Some people just don't have originality with their outfits.
It's like I hear voices in my head talking to me and shit.
I saw that punk ass Charles Pippen and his cousin leaving here.
I learned the grace pose. Get your camera ready.
We're here, like we said, for trick or treat. Crazy, what did you see? You seem bothered by something.
You see that shit?
Yeah, that crazy stuck in there. I don't know what the fuck that was for.
Right. She can't stand that shit.
Well, who's the pet bitch?
Like,
What the fuck was she mean? All hoes. I saw her to scratch that poke that bitch eye.
Beware of the Shifter. Be at the premiere if you dare.
Are you gonna listen to the move?
I've been out the loop since '09. Yeah, I'll be back to get at that, though.
Check this. I'm at the motherfucking house last night. Guess what the fuck I see?
What you see?
Shamika, what's up?
Fuck you think you fucking with? It's Maxwell, bitch.
Fuck you in them shoes.
Bitch, I'm about to stalk you with these shoes.
I thought I told you to get a jump to Crazy D.
I did give it to Crazy D. You know, D, you must have seen money in that. You know, he used to produce those nudie DVDs.
Fuck you, thin man. I know you did it.
Don't let your mouth write a check, cause I will take it out on your ass. Damn, man. You serious?
I don't know.
Here's the thing about your movie, why I made the curator's pick of the Hollywood Fringe Festival. Community, heart, you're doing it.
What's going on, people? What's going on, people? Welcome to another great episode of hashtag TFR Podcast Live presents Observations by Crazy D with my special guest host, my sister Tanya M. Congress. What's going on with you? Let's make sure that you're loud and clear. Come on through.
Good morning. How am I sounding to you out there?
Oh, you sounded great.
Wonderful,
What's going on with you?
Oh, man. Wonderful morning. Happy Monday, everyone. Very peaceful morning. Woke up in very, very good spirits. This weekend was kind of challenging, with thoughts of dad and everything. But, I also, with that comes the strength. And I was thinking of him, and then I thought of him and mom, and then that strength just charged me. So I'm doing well this morning. Did my usual new routine of my skin treatment, everything. So today, you're looking at no foundation. Looking at no foundation, nice healthy glow. So I'm digging it. Let my skin breathe.
All right, that right there sounds good. Sounds real good. Listen, people, you are watching us. We are simulcasting live over Periscope, Vimeo, FB on the Film Review Movies, Music, Culture, Politics, Society page. Make sure that you like that page. We're also on Tanya M. Congress and also on Crazon Dion and Tracy Latrice, right? And of course, we are on the Film Review Life channel on YouTube. That's right. We're on YouTube right now, live. Tune in the Film Review Live channel. Just go there, search hashtag TFR Podcast Live OB episode 19. Episode 19, and you will have us there. We will be on the chat. The chat is open. The chat in Facebook is open. And the phone lines, 213-943-3358. 213-943-3358. As we get started, without any further ado, what is the topic for today? What is the topic for today? The topic is reparations then, reparations now, reparations the future. Reparations then, reparations now, reparations the future, right? So, as we go through this, the discussion concerning reparations for American blacks, descendants of slavery, needs to be the only discussion coming from out of American blacks' mouths where it concerns voting. Forget the nationalists or the communists. The Marxism, racist trained groups both look to collapse the state. Both are run by white extremists on the anarchist side and the accelerationist side. Both need to be reprogrammed with the 1619 Project, but many are lost causes, thinking they are patriots when it pertains to the non-distribution of reparations to American blacks. Let's discuss. The phone lines are open. 213-943-3358. 213-943-3358. So our logo right there at the top, right above on my sisters on the right side, left side, depending on how your vantage point is. Reparations, and then you can see the people on the left and the people on the right. And it's saying now, no. Now, no. So what do you have to say about that as before we get started here?
Well, I'm looking at this, and I'm very perplexed at the thought of the people, anarchists and all the other special interest groups, thinking that they have a choice in this matter. Our government as well. See, either it's going to be one way or the other. It's going to be, and I need to look directly in the camera today. I'm not playing around this morning. All right. Not that I ever was, but I'm really not playing around this morning. It's going to be an atonement or a reckoning. You heard what I said. It's either going to be an atonement or a reckoning. Atonement is voluntary. And it's very wise to engage in an atonement because you have a level of autonomy, if you will, in how you roll that out, how you make that atonement. You have a level of autonomy to plan. You have a level of autonomy to implement fairness in your decision making and how you do things. You have a certain level of autonomy in coming up with the how you divide it, how you calculate, and how many years you're going to spread it out over, and so on and so forth. So that it's befitting that we would say before, now, and in the future, because it's going to take that. So you're making an atonement for what was in the past that you neglected to keep your word on, number one, several words. that you refuse to keep. So there's an atonement for your error there and your lack of integrity there. And then you have to pay for current because of what you're currently doing now, to keep us, back in not giving us what is, you're not really giving us anything. You're paying what is due. You're paying what is owed. You're not giving us anything. So we don't have our hat in our hands when we say what we say, right? This is the reason why we have to take a different direction and a different approach to get this done, because somebody is not mentally apt and is not paying attention to how things are going. So now, so you act like you have a choice in the matter now. If you don't take the integral route and atone and make right your wrongs, then what happens then is a reckoning. Now, a reckoning is quite a bit different. A reckoning takes account. It is an account of a record of everything that you've done and not done. All right. And it incurs its own set of issues. It incurs its own set of problems that go along with it because you refuse to atone. That means you refuse to acknowledge that you even did anything wrong from jump. So now pride and arrogance have you in a place, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. So if you tighten your bootstraps and you sit up in your pride and you say, I don't care what they say, those, whatever you call us, porch monkeys, whatever you call us, spooks, whatever, a number of names that y'all came up with over the years. I don't care what they say. Who do they think they are? Well, God is about to show you who we are. And you know more than you think we know about who we are actually. Let's be factual about some things. Now, reckoning is a forced and orchestrated plan that is forced and orchestrated by God, not us. It's just a series of events that will follow the beginning of the reckoning. Will appear as one thing, but it is unstoppable. It's unstoppable. It will keep going until the atonement begins. It will keep going until the atonement begins through our generation, through the next, however long it takes. So you guys are in the middle of a civil war that we're not too stupid to understand has to do with this reparations issue. Neither one of y'all are in agreement about doing it, or some of you are, but it's about when, long as it doesn't inconvenience you. This is not a matter of your convenience or inconvenience. This is a matter of what's right and what's wrong. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. And the righteous are about to be put there no matter what this election comes out to be. It's no longer about y'all. It's about y'all and y'all's camp. It's about y'all regarding y'all's concerns, but regarding us, the righteous are going to be in authority. It's coming. Believe it. Mark this day. Mark this day. Believe it. The righteousness is coming.
Listen, boy. Listen. Speaking of atonement, we have more definitions of words today. Hooray! We have more definitions of words today, and we are going to show on this show. So make sure that you share it. Make sure that you like it. Make sure you share with all your friends. Let them know, because today we're going to show you the definitive reasons why we should be talking exclusively reparations, everything. But first, before we get started, of course, we always have to start with what's going on over the internet, which is a distraction. This right here, people, this came across the internet, right? So let me bring it bigger so I can read it here, right? Cuties, backlash. Led Netflix U.S. cancellations to spike nearly 8-fold. Analytics firm says, right? What do you think about that? Is that something important that we should be worried about?
No. I mean, we do have a concern with pedophilia in this country, and it is a concern. And we are multitasking at this point, some of us, in the things that we have to address. But I'm not gonna see, once we came out with the report on it and the other things that came out and other people did broadcasts on it or whatever, that's behind. Yeah, we expected there to be cancellation, so that's just that goes with the territory. When we report it and other people report it in the same manner in which we did, we expected that. So that's old news. They didn't even have to put that in the news, period.
They didn't have to put it in the news, period, because you remember there used to be a term that the old folks used to use concerning fast little girls. They say she fast, womanish,
yeah,
right. And really, I feel for the little girl that acted in this. I feel for all of them because they're gonna need a good PR firm, because her face is the plaster. Is plaster. She is the poster child for this, right? And the fact that depending on how her parents were and who her parents were or are, she could have went up to them and said, they're talking about doing this and I'm not too comfortable with it, and the parents would have shut it down. But her being what they used to say, fast ass, right? They used to say that too. She being fast may have cost her reputation in the acting business, right? So people, here's another meme. As we get started, as we get closer to putting the rubber to the road, people are upset at stories with signs that say mask only. They're upset with stores with signs that say mask only. Now imagine how it felt when it said whites only. I thought that was a good meme.
It is good. I saw that too this weekend, especially when a lot of the stuff that you're selling in there probably came, from us, or had something to do with our gardening and farming and stuff like that. And then you telling us we can't come in. I often thought about, like, when we see those old movies, when it was that time period where, our people were going through such ridiculous things. I often wondered what was in the minds of them when they put whites only. Was it just the shade of skin, or did they have other kinds of thoughts, like we're not clean, or we're, I don't know how they could come up with that any more than their own. But I just wondered what was going through their minds. Besides, was it just the skin color?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just the biology, because science. Dark skin, dark hair, dark skin dominant. Pale skin, light eyes, blonde hair, stringy hair, recessive. So when you get those two people together, this is just biology. When you get two people together, the child most likely will come out looking more like the dominant gene than the recessive gene. And this is what the problem is. When people talk about love, right? Love is really an MFer when it comes to keeping a certain phenotype on the planet, right? Which brings us to this next one. This one came from D.L. Hewley, right? He said, don't tell black people to get over slavery when you still haven't gotten over losing your slaves. Don't tell black people to get over slavery when you still haven't gotten over losing your slaves.
Smart when he says stuff. Don't tell black people to get over slavery when you still haven't gotten over losing your slaves. That's absolutely right. And that really should be plastered just about everywhere in places where that mindset is held. They're still holding on to that mindset, like there's that undercurrent. See, most of that was in southern states, but there are some northern states too. I don't know if those people migrated from the south, but in certain states like Massachusetts, Boston in particular, I lived there, and there was an undercurrent of racism. And I can respect the ones in that picture more because you know where they're coming from. You know where they're coming from. Their stuff is out front, but that undercurrent racism, that covert racism, that right there is jelly. But anything that represents a jellyback to me automatically turns my stomach and gets my my gold up. So I can appreciate them where they're coming from more so than the ones that are in the northern states that may have migrated from the southern, or descendants of people who migrated from the southern states and they have that covert racism. I'd rather it be like that, so I know exactly where you stand.
Exactly where you stand. Yes. So which brings us to this one. This is for all the less informed folks who were cheering for Obama Biden's The Dreamers. As I mentioned before, this is the last election that the Dixiecrats and Republicans will fight for the black vote. They are really competing for the Latino vote, right? And what does it say here? Let me bring it so I can read the caption in the thing. Opinion. Trump's Latino support could earn him the White House. Here's why. They're with him, right? Here's why the Latinos, the Latinas, the Hispanics are with Donald Trump. Now, we've been talking about this for a while, and we've been talking about shooting yourself in the foot, right? We've been talking about shooting yourself in the foot. When you follow your slave masters who say, we're not going to ever talk to this man at all, and you don't sit down and talk to the man and at least discuss with the man, because that's what politics is. Politics is discussing, coming to agreements on some things. On other things, you might say, not so much. I'm not going to come into an agreement with you, right? All right, people. So let's get to this now. Let's get to some definitions now. Let's get this started. Make sure that you smash the share button and let the people know that we are on, because we're getting ready to drop some definitions that you need to see, and we're getting ready to show you the reasons why the only thing that we should be talking about back then, now, and the future is reparations. So let's go with this first. Let's go with the definition of what reparations are. Reparations, the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to and otherwise helping those who have been wronged. Sub definition, the compensation for war damage paid by a defeated nation, right? Now, most nationalists and anarchists, I would say too, believe that one, that it's a failed nation. So they're fighting and saying that America is not a defeated nation, and thus and so we're not going to pay reparations to American blacks because they did not defeat us. So a lot of nationalists take that definition and run with it. But really, reparations are measures taken by the state. The state. Remember, we always talk about the state, and we talk about how the anarchists want to collapse the state, and the accelerationists want to collapse the state. So why would we be Marxist or racist on either side when both want to drop the state? Because it is about this reparations then, reparations now, and reparations in the future. Reparations are measures taken by the state to redress gross and systematic violations of human rights law or humanity law through the administration of some form of compensation or restitution to the victims, right? That is as clear a definition of what reparations is then, now, and the future. 213-943-3358. 213-943-3358. And we have a phone call. So we're going to bring the line up here and bring in 504. I think 504 is Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken. 504, are you on the line?
Oh, God bless you. I was listening, but let me see if I can get this clear though. So the defeated party has to pay reparations. Is that what I hear?
Okay.
Part of the definition.
Okay, wait a minute. Say it again. Let me turn you up a little bit because I didn't get it clear. Go ahead. Say it again.
Yeah. Okay. I just tuned in. I was listening, but you said the first part of the definition didn't say that the defeated party has to pay reparations.
The deceded. Okay, you mean the part? No. That's a side definition that I said that the nationalists like to use, where the nation who was doing damage, like Germany, had to pay. They were defeated, but they had to pay the Jewish people restitution for what they did to them, putting them in concentration camps, boiling them, doing experiments. So that's the definition that the nationalists use to try to say that American blacks did not defeat America, so thus this is why we shouldn't give reparations. But I also gave the other two definitions.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, does that apply to what you know or may not know? Does that apply to why Haiti has to pay France?
Well, you know what? They came into that by Tariq Nasheed's 1804 movie. They came into that agreement because France said that you owe us because we made so many dollars, so such a commerce, such a this and this and this, and if you don't, we're going to invade again, and there'll be an endless war. So they went on and started paying France, but really France should have been paying them, being it was their land.
Exactly, right. And then I understand you have like the slave owners receive reparations too, right? Because they were making so much money off our African American ancestors that some of the slave owners receive money from the U.S. government. Is that right?
Well, that is true because during Reconstruction there was a backdoor deal with cigars and whiskey or scotch, and they made the decision then to hand it back over, and it was some other people that were involved that we're going to get into in future shows, but there were other people involved, and so they got paid for that, and they got their land and their possessions back. Then they started sharecropping. How you like that? Then it went into the nadir. So the sharecropping, 13th Amendment, they started putting them in jail. Chain gangs work for free. Still doing the same thing that slaves were doing when they were in bondage. How about that?
Yeah, they got all kind of ways to tempt the system, and they just find ways to finagle this, so that they make money. Well, no matter what happens, they're gonna make money from it. So, it's definitely a trick bag.
Okay, so let's take that thought, because you're in Louisiana, correct?
Yeah.
One of the biggest slave ports, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And also slave farms too, right? Breeding farms too, right?
Yeah, breeding farms, plantations, all those sort of things, right?
And then you had the Creoles who also own slaves too, correct?
Yeah, a few blacks at this point in time who owned some African Americans. I guess the Creoles were like the descendants of the slave masters. I guess they had some wherewithal to buy plantations, to buy some slave Africans while they were at it.
Yeah, because there's a movie out called Cane River that we reviewed last year that talks about a love affair between a descendant of of the Creoles and I'm going to say American black woman who were once, her people were once owned by Creoles, and this relationship, and it goes into telling this called Cane River. But do the Creoles have to pay reparations?
Wow. Yes, first I heard, I think the Creoles have to pay reparations. That's really right there. Have you heard anything about that?
No. I'm asking you as a person who is in Louisiana.
I haven't heard anything about that.
No, I know you hadn't heard anything about it, but we hatched that on the show because when they talk about reparations, it's going to be more than just the United States government that's going to have to pay up, right? So do you yourself believe that the Creoles should pay reparations if they own slaves?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Okay, so do the African tribes who sold slaves, do they owe reparations to enslaved people?
I understand their form of slavery was not chattel slavery, but push comes to shove, I would say yeah.
Okay, because you probably haven't read that article in the New Yorker magazine, My Great Grandfather, the Slave Trader. You probably haven't read that article, but it's on the internet. It came out in 2018, and she talks about once the mid-Atlantic or the transatlantic slave trade ended, there was a surplus of bodies, right? Because there were the Igbo. The Igbo was one of the tribes that owned slaves, and they would bury when the slave master died or the slave trader died, they would bury the slaves that he had alive. He's died. He's dead. They bury him alive. Is there reparations that need to be paid from the African?
Yeah, based on what you're telling me, yeah. Stick something gruesome like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, thank you for calling. I just wanted to get some context because you are in Louisiana, and that is one of the largest slave ports where it was actually really going down. Besides Baltimore, Philadelphia, anything by the water. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, appreciate your show. First time I've heard it, and I'm trying to tune in more.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Take care now.
You too.
God bless.
You too. All right. So, people, that was good because, we have to, as we're going through this reparations situation and what we're talking about primarily what the United States government is up for what they did, right? But there's also other people that have to pay for what they did, right? What do you got to say about that before we go on? I think that was a pretty good call.
You were asking about the ones that sold slaves into slavery. See, I've heard the excuse that, well, they didn't really know what all was going to happen to the people that they sold and stuff like that, and they didn't know they would go through all of that on the slave ships and the passage and all of that is crap. The fact that the bottom line is to you for some free labor, and I don't know if your country was already poor at that point and needed money, or you were greedy and just wanted more money. Whichever side of the coin it's on, you sold people. That's like selling yourself, which you basically because throughout all of history, you and your descendants are looked at in a particular manner. That's the reason why there can really be no reconciliation now between the two, the American black and the African black. Now, I'm not strict or anything like that, but there is a dividing line. There is a point of demarcation because of the offense that has never been apologized for, never been repented of, else that we wouldn't have this reparations discussion. All right. And you guys are very much involved, just like you sold people to be brought over here for free labor. Now you partake in the repayment plan. You must partake in it because you partook in the benefit when you did the selling. And because I'm not sure what the primary religion that was being practiced over there. I'm sure it wasn't so-called Christianity, which is a whole nother issue. However, whichever one it was, the book says, we all know what the book is. The book talks about man stealing. And though just because they bought the people from you, I mean that wasn't man stealing. So you participated in two offenses. You sold people and you participated in man stealing because those people were taken off their land involuntarily where they resided and was forced into forced labor, forced breeding, forced everything. And so you participated in man stealing too. That may have to do with the impoverished in certain parts of Africa now because that's a curse for having did what you did. So now you spend time, a lot of you spend time struggling to, make ends meet, struggling to feed the kids. You know, we got to feed the children. We got all kinds of stuff going on, charities and stuff. Go back and help you repent of your curse. That's how repent of your deeds. And then get engaged with your brothers that you sold people into slavery with, and come up with a reparations plan. You must partake. You must.
You know, from what I see, I mean, 213-943-3358. If you want to come in and just listen, just come in and you can listen. I forgot to tell people, press 1 on your touch-tone dial. Technology created by a black woman to make the touch-tone dial. Use your touch-tone dial, press 1, and I'll see the sign that says that you want to participate in the conversation. Other than that, feel free to just listen. And if you have a comment, just press 1 on your touch-tone dial, and we will chime you in, right? So people, let's go further. Let's look at the word redress, right? Because that was a word that's in there, the redress, right? Redress of grievances. Let's look at the word redress. In the redress system is a government system operated by the legislative council to receive and handle complaints from members of the public who are aggrieved by government actions or policies, right? Policy, a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, party, business, or individual. A definition, prudent or expedient conduct or action. So in other words, they have long gone without being prudent and expedient on taking care of this, and as they choose not to take care of this, the price tag is getting larger and larger and larger and larger, right? We're looking at one group of people said 250 trillion. 250 trillion. And if they keep on going, it's going to be 500 trillion. So they should come up with negotiations and, trying to figure out how to do it. Here's another definition. Let's go through and figure out what government is. Like, see, we throw these words around, but we don't really know what these words mean. We don't know what it means to redress the evil of slavery through reparations provided by the United States government, right? So let's look at government. What is government? Government is the system of people, laws, and officials that define and control the country we live in. The U.S. government is a representative democracy with three branches. The three branches of U.S. government: legislative, makes laws, Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate. Executive, carries out laws, President, Vice President, Cabinet, most federal agencies. Judicial, evaluates laws, Supreme Court, and the lower courts in the United States of America, right? So we're going through these definitions because we have to understand what these definitions are, right? So let's get to really putting the rubber to the road, and let's look at this presentation that I clipped up here. Let me go over here to the media. Let's go right here. All right, people. So let's play this. This is a definitive edit on why it should be reparations then, reparations now, reparations the future, before we even talk about doing anything else. 213-943-3358. The chat again is open on YouTube. The chat again is open on FB. Let's go through this real quick, right? Let's go through it. We went through some definitions and we're going to come back and bring some more. But we want to go through this real quick and bring this through. So these are different memes and clips that I've seen displayed over the internet over the time. And so we put them all together in this presentation, and we're gonna stop and analyze as we go along. Here we go.
The problem exists because white people think they're better than black people, and they want to oppress us, and they want us to allow ourselves to be oppressed.
This is the big. I agree with you perfectly. This is the basic problem.
Then what do you
that white people think they're better than others?
Okay, so he asked the guy. He says, "If you I agree, or I agree. Superhost, I agree. Sounds like John Boehner. Didn't John Boehner sound like Super? For those in Cleveland who used to watch Saturday mornings with Superhost, didn't John Boehner sound like Superhost? And this guy sounds like the standard Caucasian guys that we will hear on a channel that, you know, we all grew up on watching in Cleveland, WUAB channel 43. And they would be like, yes. And I agree. This is something, and this is something. And he says, well, then, if you agree, why are you talking to me? What can I do about it? And so let's let this brother hit this home. Now, this is the 1960s. Should have been talking reparations then. Let's continue.
That solved the problem. You guys pull the strings that close schools. You guys draw the boundaries that keep our kids restricted to the ghetto. You guys write up the restrictive covenants that keep us out of houses. So it's up to you to talk to your brothers and your sisters and persuade them that they have a responsibility. We've assumed ours for over 400 years.
Now see, this is that hamster wheel that we talk about, right? It's that hamster wheel. Now that was the 1960s. And what was the message? Tell your brothers and sisters, you have to reach out. We have done what we could do to tell you that the system that has been made, that was built off the backs of American blacks, was not a fair system. It's such and such, etc., this and that, all kinds of movements. We went over here, we went over there. We found out that this movement is no better than that movement, because when it all comes down to it, they didn't want to talk about reparations then. But we should have been talking about reparations then, reparations now, and reparations the future. So let's listen to the next guy. The beautiful brothers just making sense out here. Another one still relevant today from the 1960s. This is a devastating indictment on this system, right? And all it needs to do is admit that it needs to redress our grievances and come with a reparations package that is comparable to what it would be worth today for us to be satisfied, to not be disgruntled. employees of the United States of America Corporation.
Tell us that it is manly to keep your word. All right? If you are a man, you keep your word. And now all that the black people in this country are demanding, and even the black people in the whole world are demanding, is that you keep your word. You told us we were free. Well then, show us that we're free. You told us that there is justice, equality for all in this country. Well then, stick to your word. And let us see the justice and equality for all.
Initially. Okay. So let's pause right there. So what do you have to say to that right there real quick? See what you got to say to that.
Both of those brothers made some very poignant points, and I'm sitting over here smiling because the sense was being made then. And you just, before you started the clips, you mentioned we're at about 250 trillion now, and if they keep this up, we're going to be at about 500 trillion dollars because they just refuse to address the issue. See, it's continuing to accumulate because there's been no incentive. We went trying to kumbaya, trying to say, why don't y'all do the right thing? But now in the 60s, the guy in the barbershop, he's like, well, go tell your brothers and sisters, you go speak out to them. We can't speak to them. You got to speak to them. And that was taking the high road. It was taking the high road. It's like, well, since you agree, then go ahead on and get started. Start your movement. Start your thing. Get your thing going. And so, but here's my issue with that. You can't tell a people who are innately jellyback. Now, I'm going to qualify what I just said. See, when you are a people who have started out, you started the whole thing in deceit. Even though y'all, the Africans that sold the people and y'all brought them over, y'all deserve each other. But you started it in deceit, right? You started in deceit. So deceptiveness from the very beginning automatically implies that there is either selfishness involved, self-centered, self-seeking, or whatnot, and fear. So there's a self-centeredness and there's a fear. So now you have a people, and I got to tell it like it is, and just whoever's listening, if you are Caucasian, own it, own what I got to say, and trace back history and see that I'm right. All right. When you have a people that are innately what I call jellyback. Jellyback is not having a backbone. Sidebar, if you see a mouse doesn't have a spine. A mouse can completely flatten out like a pancake and slide up under a tight door space. A mouse can constrict its body the size of a pencil and get through a hole because it has no spine. All right. So this is what I'm saying. You're speaking to a person, and he's speaking to a guy saying he agrees with him. I wonder if that same guy would have agreed if he was standing there with about 50 other white folks with this guy. See, the the premise of gangs is being, amongst a group, and you have more strength in the number. And for some reason, people get more chutzpah. They get more chutzpah when they're standing in a group of their peers, right? So I'm wondering if he were not the lone white guy in the barbershop that day, would he have been inclined to agree? Well, he looks around him, ain't nothing there but black people. So of course he's gonna agree. He's not gonna stand there and say, oh, I disagree with you. He's not gonna do that. So he never went out and said anything to anybody about what that guy said to him. He didn't say anything to anybody. Why? Because he was already partaking of privilege of being who he was. And secondly, there was no you have to double back on fear. So there was no fear of a repercussion in not doing it. See, responsibility is one's ability to respond to that which is put before them. And so you have an ability to respond. That's the responsibility. These people have been non-responsive to their area of they've been non-responsive, like somebody dead and needs some defibrillators. They have not been responsive to what it is. So now by the time we get to the second guy, the second guy is a little bit more, he's not as gentle with what he said. So he's a little bit stronger in what he said, just a little bit, just a smidgen stronger than the first guy. But ain't nothing changed. I don't know how many years it was, or that was among the 60s, but 60s lasted 9 years, right? From 1960 to 1969. So we got 9 years we can consider between the time that those conversations took place, and still in 9 years, just figuratively speaking, it was no change. So at the end of 9 years, let's say this is the second conversation was 1969, you still talking about, asking. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so look, you know what else doesn't have a spine? A leech. A leech doesn't have a spine. It just swims around and grabs you, right? And it leeches off of you and it eats from you. Now, next up is Claude Anderson, right? Claude Anderson right here. That's Boyce Watkins right there. He's on Boyce Watkins' show, Claude Anderson, at least once a week, right? And he breaks down some things. So let's break down some things that we've been talking about, right? We've been talking about critical race theory versus what is implemented right now, critical legal studies, right? And you can go back and watch our previous episode where we talk about previous episodes where we talk about what critical race theory is versus critical legal studies, right? Make sure that you smash the share button on this. Smash the share button on this. Smash the like button on this. Make sure that you go over to the Cash App, $TFR Podcast Live, $TFR Podcast Live, and put a few dollars on there, right? So we can continue bringing you these type of programs where we bring you definition, where we bring you information while still being extremely entertaining, right? 213-943-3358. So Boyce Watkins has Claude Anderson on his show, right? And so Claude Anderson informs us to this right here as he talks about population. Now, what he's talking about is a report that came out in 2001 that laid out what Claude Anderson has had in his books, his multiple books since the 90s, giving you the blueprint to how this works, right? And so he's telling you in 2001 they came out a report and they were telling about the population in during right after slavery. So here we go.
There were only two groups in the country at that time. That was blacks and whites. That was the only two groups of any consequence, blacks and whites.
Well,
and that time Indians weren't even included.
What year is that from?
This was August 13, 2001. This is what I was saying. They finally put it out, saying, here's what Dr. Anderson is saying. That time you had two groups. You had these about 5.5 million black folk at that time, and you had the rest were whites. Indians weren't included in anything. Indians were not.
Okay, so this has to be very clear when people start talking about Indians and what the natives were doing. They weren't the same natives that were there in the initial beginning. The first thing that the so-called European explorers saw, the first people that they saw were not the Mongoloids that came across the land bridges 15,000 years ago and co-opted the look of the natives that were there. If you ever see these porcelain figurines, they show you who was there. And they give you descriptions in the history books of the coarse hair and the dark skin, and they even call them Ethiopian, right? So when he's telling you this about the natives didn't do anything, they were out the loop. It was basically even in number, and then the Europeans started, the Euro-American, as the Europeans call them, began to import more immigrants with the tag Caucasian white to build their numbers against the now what we call ourselves American black. So let's continue on.
Not included, they were put into a special protected category. And so if you didn't have any, when the Civil War ended, you only had something like about 4,000 his so-called Hispanics, they would have called Mexicans and Chicanos at that time, in the entire United States.
Today I'm also pleased to announce that I will soon sign an executive order establishing.
Now this is what we call critical legal studies, right? Now you know about the 1619 project, right? Donald Trump is signing legislation. He didn't sign legislation. He signed an executive order that will form a commission that would study to bring the curriculum forth that will be a patriotic 1776 curriculum, right? Where it only dealt with what happened at 1776, not what happened to former America, which starts in 1619, and not the nearly 100 years plus that it took that American black people, or let me say then, enslaved black people, built the country and brought it to the point where they could even emancipate themselves from England. Let's continue. But this is what it is, and people have been playing around, and they did not realize that critical race theory was already circulating since 1989. But we talked about that in the previous show. We're not going to back up. You can go to our previous show, our show on Friday, and we lay it all out for you.
Establishing a national commission to promote patriotic education. It will be called the 1776 Commission.
The 1776 Commission. What are you people playing around with? You're going over here to the anarchists. Yeah, some people over here with the accelerationists, and both of them are white extremists, and neither one of them are interested in reparations for you then, reparations for you now, and reparations for you in the future, right? What are you doing? You see, this, what's happening out there in the streets does not amount to a hill of beans when legislation is being passed. And legislation, what you learn about Euro-Americans or Europeans, is what's on paper is what they go by, no matter what you're talking. Let's continue.
Thank you. It will encourage our educators to teach our children about the miracle of American history and make plans to honor the 250th anniversary of our founding. Think of that, 250 years.
See, now they're taking away time of their founding. Now, if you watch hashtag TFR Podcast Live just past Sunday evening at 5:30, we come on at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, you heard us talk about a movie called The Sand Pebbles, right? That talked about, and we broke down a brief history going back to how all of this kicked off, where America was involved in this situation with this is a fictitious story, but it's based on the actual patrols that were happening in China at the time on gunboats, such as the one that's described in the Sand Pebbles. As we go back, we talk about Russia. Did you know that Russia's form of government is not as old as America's form? You think that it's been a long time because they were over there, and their history kicks off first, but they've had many changes of government because they have not been able to remain stable. Like it used to be the USSR as my sister and I grew up, but now it's supposed to be a democratic such and such and such. But they have, well, we're going to get to that. But let's continue with this. So when you read history and you listen, and when you read it and you research, you find certain things out that are amazing. And when we found out that critical race theory, which is based on the thoughts of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the Panthers, and we found out that was circulating since 1989, and no one was telling American blacks that it was not exactly the same as it was in the 60s, because some Caucasians, rich affluent Caucasians, were trying just a little bit, doing what the guy said at the beginning of the clip. Go talk to your brothers and sisters. Let's continue.
Only 4,000. Only 4,000. At that time, but you had, guess what? You had 5.5 million blacks.
Only 4,000 Puerto Ricans in America at the time. Let's continue.
But when Hispanics said, we're going to close this power down, loop down, well, we're going to displace those black folk. We're going to displace them, as I told you in 1974. And by the year 2000, we're going to take black folks out. And so from 1866, the end of the Civil War, to the year 2000, guess what? The Hispanic population went up, Dr. Watkins, from 4,000 to over 100,000. Because they were pouring into the country then. They'd never been subjected into slavery. And what most people don't know is that Hispanics were the third greatest enslavers of black folk around the world.
Okay, so when we're talking about coalition, when you research, when you have historians telling you the third largest enslavers of black bodies, and you're talking about coalition and you don't see why you're not advancing. Oh, we're going to break this down tonight. Make sure that you smash the share button with your people so they can watch this. We're breaking down why it should be reparations then, reparations now, reparations the future. And if we're not talking about that, we are not talking. We're not discussing with you anything. We're not discussing coalition. We're not discussing being Marxist. We're not discussing being accelerationists. We're not discussing anything but what is owed to us. And if we're not discussing that, then if you don't want to discuss that, then get out of our face.
Everybody has enslaved black folk. Now, don't just pick on whites, Europeans. If you're going to pick on white Europeans, you got to get everybody. Because you see, all these other groups in America are classified as whites. Blacks don't even know that. You got all these educated blacks with all these damn degrees, master's degrees, doctorate degrees in professional areas. And they don't even understand that this country right now, by federal registers, they classify anybody coming to this country except black folk as being whites.
And I would add that they have Egyptians come in, and they are also classified as white. I'm talking about dark Egyptians. Egyptians that look like they come from the Sudan, right? The ones you don't see on TV. They classify the Ottoman Turks as white, but they also classify all Egyptians as white. Let's continue.
You know why? Because all the wealth that was mal-distributed in this country.
I am minding my business. That's what I'm doing. Okay, am I in front of your house? Am I in front of your house? You calling the cops because I'm black? Is that what it is?
No.
Okay, why are you calling the cops?
You're in front of my neighbor's house. You need to leave.
Why do I?
This lady calls the cops on a black census worker in her neighborhood. What is it about people calling on people, talking about you don't belong here? Like, isn't this a free, pluralistic society where people with many different thought processes can coexist at the same time and people can walk to and fro freely? Isn't that so? That's why it should be reparations now, reparations back then, and reparations in the future, because we wouldn't even have to worry about this, because we will be in our communities, building our economy, making our connections with overseas businesses in different places to exchange, to sell our goods. Let's continue.
I need to leave.
Because you don't have a reason to be here.
Oh, do you know? Do you know?
What are you doing here?
Who are you? Huh? Karen. Is your name Karen? Is your name Karen? Go ahead, call the cops. I'll wait for the cops, actually. I have no problem on that. Y'all gonna learn to stop messing with black people. You gonna learn to stop messing with black people. That's what you're gonna learn. Just because I'm black and I ain't bothering you, you think I'm a threat? Because
this is what he said. He said, just because I'm black and I'm not bothering you, you think I'm a threat. Now those words were flipped around, but you see, that right there though, even though it was flipped around and he meant to say, I'm not bothering you, I'm not a threat, but it's because I'm black, right? Right, because they say that, right? But they disconnected me somehow. They disconnected me from Blog Talk. How about that? But anyway, look. So, but he's saying because they want to be, they want to have some interaction and feel like they are important. That is what it is. So even though he said it, the words were flipped around, but it was true what he said. It was none truer statement than he said than that right there. We're back on Blog Talk, 213-943-3358. I don't know how we got disconnected, but we're back doing what we're doing. So let's gotta take a break and just shake my head. I just can't believe it. I can't believe that just happened like that. It's amazing. Let's continue on.
I was white, you probably wouldn't call the cops.
Whiteness. Anything, that's why everybody wants to be white. They're branded. Hispanics on that sheet I just showed you. Hispanics over this end. Hispanics didn't come into were they included onto way over here. And with Hispanic, in 1970, when I was with President Carter in the White House, that's when when the Hispanics ceased they ceased being Hispanics, and when they wanted to be called minorities. Because that way they said, if black folk got any benefits, we want to share in them. Even though we haven't suffered, we have never been enslaved. As a matter of fact, we were enslavers. We enslaved blacks. Blacks were the victims. But if they get anything, we want to get some of it too. So they begin to classify themselves as minorities. And guess what? You look at the front page of the Black History Reader. Same thing with Asians. Asians then started pouring into this country until about 1970. After that 1965 Civil Rights law was enacted, 1965, 1966. Our civil rights leaders sat there on their dead asses and let them classify all these immigrants as being equal to black folk. The greatest thing you can do is try to pretend that somehow equals, that people that are unequal are classified as equal. So they started classifying all these fabricated minorities, women, gays, Hispanics, Arabs, Asians, classifying them as minority or people of color. So they can be equal to black folks. That any bag of money comes out or any money goes on the counter has to be divvied up with them, split up and die with them. And Obama did the same thing with the Indian lawsuits that I'm opposed to. And I'm pushing my own version of the blacks.
How is it that you have a group of people who did not go through the same things that you could, all those set-asides, all the things that Martin Luther King fought for, Civil Rights Act 64, 65, Voter Rights Act 68, Fair Housing Act. How is it that all of these different immigrants come in who did not go through, and those are supposed to be the set-asides and the protected class we were supposed to be? How is it that they get all of this And they did not go through what we went through. Get in line. That's why it's and you don't get any part of this because we are not minority. We are not thrown in with everybody who did not have the experience that we had in this country. I mean, I was in the store one day and this Asian woman came up, and I don't know how the conversation came up. It was something that was going, maybe it was a TV playing, and then I said something, I just said something to myself. You know, they always want to get in the conversation because she was standing there, she was looking at something. And, you know, they always want to get in the conversation with you. I don't know why that is. Stay away from me. But anyway, look. So she said something. She didn't say anything. I said something to what was on the television. He said, "Oh, no, it's not that way." How would you know, lady? Your people, you just got here. How would you know? You didn't go through being drawn and quartered, castrated, tar and feathered. You didn't go through that. You didn't go from your children being ripped from you. You didn't go from your wife or your significant other being raped. You didn't go through that. You might have went through that in your own country, and you should be over there fighting to get reparations. But don't come get ours. That's why it is reparations then, reparations now, and reparations in the future. Let's keep this going right here. Let's continue on here.
Black Indians and the black freedmen. So anything goes on the table, they divide it up between those groups. Those groups have no link. Here's my point, and I'm gonna get off this subject. There's no link between fabricated minorities having a constitutional right. And the Supreme Court knew that. They knew that. But in 1965, when I was civil rights leaders, was meeting in Washington with Martin Luther King and John Lewis and all the rest of these civil rights leaders, when the white women went down and took the 1964 act, they call an Opportunity Act, that President Johnson was proposing, they went in there and said, look, don't make that thing strictly for black folk. You gotta put women on there. Because see, at that time, there's nothing in the Constitution talking about women and genders and all those things. Those things were added by white women who demanded, went to the court and say, put gender on and sex discrimination, gender discrimination.
Now don't push me. I'm not a child. I'm grown. I'm trying to use the bathroom. The lady is coming. I see the bathroom. Now she needs to get to her door. Can I?
In reality, they talk about the Notorious RBG. You know, she just passed. But you know, her thing was women's rights. Most to the point, Caucasian women's rights. She is a long line, in my opinion, of, remember, these are just our observations. You have to get off the hamster wheel, get out that mindset that just because people are supposed to be quote unquote liberal and they're supposed to be for the Democrat way and for civil rights, you have to figure out what civil rights they're for. Are they for your civil rights? Is your name, is your group, American Blacks, ever mentioned? Or do they talk about women's rights, such and such and such, and you got to get in where you fit in? All these different people who clammed in and climbed on to what we had, that us as a protected class were supposed to have. So when you're sitting there, the Notorious RBG was nothing but a long line of women's suffrage, right? And what did the women's suffrage movement? The women's suffrage movement was worried about the black man getting the vote before they got the vote. It's always been something. And then many of in the women's suffrage movement were eugenicists. And remember now, when it was the women's suffrage movement, they tried to put Harriet Tubman in, but Harriet Tubman wasn't having nothing to do with them because it was crazy in her mind. And Ida B. Wells didn't have anything to do with them either because it was crazy. And the AKAs wanted to march in the women's suffrage march. And remember now, they're eugenicists. They will be today accelerationists. If you get yours, they would rather have the state fall. For real. On everything. Just do your research. Get off that hamster wheel. Get out that mindset. Create your mind state. Research the information and get to the facts and say, yes, this is fact. Right? They are accelerationists if they didn't have it. So the AKA said, well, if we can't walk, because they want them to march in the back. Pull up the rear like the caboose, you good nick. Right? And the AKA said, we look better than you. We're more prettier than you. Our skin is fully baked. They put the mirror up to them and said, what? How could you have us walk in the back? And they said, no, we're not going to walk. But then some broke away from the AKAs and formed another sorority who then did march in the march, and they marched in the back. So you see, people, as we go forward here, when they said the Notorious RBG, she had Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed on, and her and Scalia were great friends on the court. You're like, well, if she's for civil rights, Scalia was a stump down, as far as anybody could tell, bigot, and worked to reverse everything that Thurgood Marshall got pushed into law when he was on the court. But they're friends, and they eat Italian dinners, and they listen to opera, which there's nothing wrong with opera. You know, you can listen to some opera, but come on, Marian Anderson opera. But anyway, let's continue on. They don't even know who Marian Anderson is. Okay, y'all just look that up. Here we go.
Get to my bathroom? No. What do I gotta listen to?
No, I was blocking you.
What I gotta listen to? Are you my boss? You are white privilege. You're not my boss.
Okay.
Sit down. Sit down. Oh, thank you. You're not my boss.
I need to
and you're not my boss. You're white privilege. Sit down.
Yes.
You don't have privilege over me.
Oh, I don't.
Thank you. You have privilege. No, but all of a sudden you gotta go back here. You wait for me to get to my bathroom and have respect for me like you've been having.
Call them now.
Call them.
I need
Call
to get
them.
to my door.
Good. And I need to get to my bathroom. So you rate and respect people. You have white privilege and it's not here. It's over with.
Hey, I just wanted to give my opinion on something.
Right here, the gun enthusiast is going to want to give his opinion. We're going to listen to it because it's very important. Listen to this. So this is what we are seeing. We are showing you two examples. We showed you young Karen. They got three different names for them. It's Karen, Sue, Elizabeth, something like that. You got three names. You got to bring that meme back up and memorize it. But here you are. These are the people who talk about that person who told him to get out her neighborhood because he was by her friend's house. She could be a liberal, believing in civil rights. What civil rights are they talking about? The ones that clamored in and made sure it wouldn't just be for American blacks to have after Martin Luther King took the slings and arrows, got stabbed in the chest by his own, got shot at, got stoned at, got threatened, got framed by J. Edgar Hoover. All this stuff that happened. And all the people who marched out there, and somehow a group of people who didn't have any skin in the game. It's about skin in the game. And we said that way back on an episode of hashtag TFR Podcast Live that comes on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific on the Film Review Live channel. Make sure you subscribe. We said way back that they had to have skin in the game. As soon as they get in the game, they start co-oping and wanting to make everybody anarchists or make Black Lives Matter seem like they're anarchists, right? I mean, it's just crazy. What you got to say?
You know, I think during the evolution of the American Civil Liberties Union, I think that that was a injustice to civil rights in general, because it was with them that they began to push through other things as civil rights. Civil rights, the term civil rights in general, should have just remained just having to do with us in general. They could have named the offshoot of civil rights something else. But because the main infraction and the first infraction was with us, it should have remained just with us. No other group should have been allowed to slide in under that label of that. And that's the problem, because everybody else is going to take precedent. Everybody else is going to take priority. And the nerve of some of them that are sliding in on their causes under civil rights and having the nerve to assign a level of importance to their civil rights as opposed to our civil rights. And you know, the people who are making the laws or whatever, they're going along with that. But I will say this too. Let me tell you something. I watch people in it. So I've been here 54 years, and I watched things that appeared to be comedy on the Lucy Show and things like that, when the man is a hi, hello, and he's sounding, you know, a masculine, feminine. And the audience stuff was laughing. Everybody's laughing. I watched them fight. I watched them march. I watched them protest. I watched them push their way and force their way into laws, and none of them wasn't sitting around talking about some, well, you know, they wasn't being diplomatic about it. Okay? But they pushed it along until we got infiltration in the military. Pushed along till we got infiltration in sports. Pushed along till we got positions in some of the highest offices in the land. And we pushed along, they pushed along till they have positioned themselves as a powerhouse in this nation. I am talking about the homosexual community. They pushed along and they slid that under. And I'm not, listen, don't come for me. Don't come for me. You don't want to come for me, because you're going to leave with your tail between your legs if you come for me. Listen, I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay, I'm not saying I don't have any hatred or things for homosexuals. It ain't about that. And I'm not going to put a disclaimer on that for too long. You either believe it or you don't. I don't care. But they pushed along until they positioned themselves in every arena, in the courts, whether it's down low, undercover, whatever, in the court system, in the White House, in the Capitol, in the sports arena, in the military, in the schools, as coaches for teams in high school, in the ministry. They position themselves everywhere. They push for rights to be, you're going to hear us. You're going to hear us, and you're going to do what the heck we say. You're going to do it. And they pushed and they pushed, and I didn't see as much backlash against them ever that we've had to go through, but they pushed and they pushed and they got exactly what they're in every commercial. They're in every movie scene. They're in everything. Yet here we go.
I'm gonna vote for Biden.
We don't know
what we're gonna get out of this, but
we're gonna try. Let's try it. Darn. Well again. Back to the drawing board. And then you hang your head. And your shoulder forward. Walk away. Gotta go back and replan. Go back and replan. can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Let's go through Let's go through some definitions real quick. Let me bring this up. There's a lot of anarchy going out in the street, right? Get ready on your keys, Tanya, because we're going to look up some definitions of these words, right? So let's look at 10 forms of government, right? Because we've been given definitions. You got to go back to our shows from 11 up to now. From 11 to 19, right? You just need to go back and binge watch those shows, because we bring definition, because you have to know, have heard and really understand what definitions when people are talking. When they talk about Marxism and all that on the thing, I say, well, that's nothing but a study of, and we've been through that. So you need to go back there and see that. We're not going to repeat. Here we go. So here are some definitions. So 10 forms of government: anarchy, democracy, that's too small, monarchy, tyranny, republic, totalitarian, oligarchy, federation, theocracy, and communism, right? So, Tanya, look up anarchy and give us a definition of the government, of a government that is anarchy. There's a definition. Look up 10 forms of government, and then it'll come up, and give me the definition of a government as anarchy. Because this is very important of what we're seeing out in the streets. And do you want to be in anarchy? Because America is, the United States of America, a republic that is a democracy with a federal government. That's why they call it an experiment, because they took 3 forms and melded them together to make this happen. So tell me what an anarchy government is.
Okay, an anarchy government is having its roots from the Greek word meaning no rule. Anarchy is a state of absence of law. The theory of anarchism proposes to do away with any kind of existing governments and build a society wherein each person has the freedom to exercise his will without any controlling authority. I can't hear you.
They can exercise their will. The anarchists and the accelerationists can get together and say, hey, let's go on it's like the movie Gangs of New York, where the blacks was just walking around aimlessly. I'm sure that's not how that was, but that's how old boy the director made it that way. But next thing you know, they started tarring feathering the blacks. They up there fighting each other. The nationalists, right, and the anarchists are up there fighting each other, and then next thing you know, they start going after the. So this is what it is. So that is what anarchy is. That is what you're seeing on the streets. That is what you are against, and you are against any party that pushes for anarchy. What is democracy?
Democracy is originating in ancient Greece. Democracy means rule of the people. Rule of the people. The term today refers to a political system in which the people or their elected representatives govern themselves rather than being governed. So everyone has an equal say in the decisions affecting their lives. Is that, oh, really? Okay.
I mean, that's the theory of it. Monarchy. Yeah. What is that?
Monarchy. It is the type of government having a hereditary chief of state, like a king or queen, usually known as the monarch, with life tenure and powers varying from nominal, where the powers of the monarch are regulated by a constitution, to absolute, where the monarch enjoys unlimited powers. Most modern states with monarchic rule are constitutional monarchies, with laws framed to protect the rights of the citizens. The era of absolute monarchs almost seems to have vanished now, and it is something that we hardly see.
All right. So, in other words, the Queen and the Prince of England and all that's just more for tourist attractions and show, right? So we hear this term constantly. Tyranny. What is a tyranny government?
The roots of this kind of rule from Latin tyrannia, meaning the rule of a tyrant, which is a cruel master. It is the government of authority or authority of an absolute ruler, hence arbitrary exercise of power over subjects and others not requisite for the purposes of government or approved by law and justice. Such a rule has a negative connotation, as it is often characterized by the threat of punishment and violence.
All right. So tyranny, right? So we hear these terms. So we gave you the first 5. Now let's get back to my man who is a gun enthusiast who is part of the Huey P. Newton Gun Club. If you don't know what Huey P. Newton was about, thank you, Tracy Latrice, Martin Scorsese, Gangs of New York. Make sure you go back. We talked about Gangs of New York in our episode here on hashtag TFR Podcast. Like, we break these things down for you. There's no mystery after you finish listening to what we're talking about, right? And you go do your own research. But let's listen to Huey, the enthusiast from the Huey P. Newton Gun Club.
You know, that I've been thinking about today. All right, I'm just gonna make this real quick and real simple. Okay, if you are a member of the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, and I don't care where in the country, where in the world, whatever chapter you belong to, doesn't matter. You need to own a semi-automatic rifle, point blank, period. Okay, if you don't own one, then you're not ready. Okay, you're not ready to perform your duties, perform your mission. Again, that's just my opinion.
If you feel as an American black person that made you afraid, I am sorry. I'm not sorry to tell you that most likely, and you feel sorry, and you feel like this man is going too far having this semi-automatic weapon. You feel like he's gone too far. You most likely are a coon. I just want to tell you that. If you take offense to hip-hop, reality rap as I call it, and they in the videos today or just hip-hop and general rap, and they brandish guns in there and they show you that they got firepower, and you feel some offense to that, they may be rapping and pointing the guns at the wrong enemy. But if you are afraid of that, of a black man or a black woman, American black woman or American black man having a weapon of firepower, you must be on the accelerationist side or even the anarchist side, because on the anarchist side, they want to take guns away. And who would they take guns away from? So this is what you got to look at. So if you feel that way, most likely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you are a coon. If you listen to hip hop records and you watch videos, you say, "Oh, I'm so appalled that these young black males are showing strength and showing that they have firepower too," then you're worse than the people who are afraid that one day the weapons will be aimed at the right enemy. You're a friend of those anarchists or accelerationists, and most likely, unfortunately, you are a coon. I'm looking right at him, I'm telling you, unfortunately, right? Because the reason why they don't want the young to have the pistols is because if it ever turns, but this is just our observations and our opinions on hashtag TFROB episode 19. But this, so if you feel anything other than, go on ahead, brother. Go ahead. The only thing I'll say is once the ammunition is gone, that's for everybody. Once the ammunition is gone, then what you doing then? Here we go.
And I know everybody can't afford one right now. And, you know, it doesn't matter what kind you get. It doesn't have to be an AR-15, you know, like I have. It can be an AK-47, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter what manufacturer, caliber, whatever you want to get. But everybody needs to have one. All right? I mean, it's okay to have a shotgun. It's okay to have a pistol. All those things are good. But you're not ready to actually go to combat, okay? You're not ready, okay? Because the others, and we know who I'm talking about, the others have more firepower than we do, you know, point blank, period. And people, you know, talk about revolution, they talk about this and that, talk about defending our communities, but you're not ready, okay? So, again, I know everybody's, you know, finances are different, you know, and me on here saying go get it, and you probably can't afford it. But y'all need to make some sacrifices, all right? I mean, look around your house. Sell some shit. I mean, I'm laughing, but I'm serious. Have a garage sale.
We come here today with an opportunity.
Hold up for a minute. Now, when it comes to combat, you also got to be in cardiovascular shape. And you got to be muscular. You got to be there because, you know, some of them, the others, as he said, they on roids. You know, so you got to be natural so that when you... But anyway, that's another discussion for another time. But anyway, you need to be in shape. Because if I remember when we talked about the Black Panthers from Milwaukee, and I saw a dude, and I was like, well, if it got to having to run... He wouldn't be able to run a long distance. Like, we're not ready. We're really not ready for combat because it's more than just using a semi-automatic. Because sometimes semi-automatics, they jam, whatever they do. You got to be able to go fisticuff. You got to go hand-to-hand combat. Where's your bayonet? But anyway, that's another story for another time. So that is an extreme. Now, this is Tim Scott. Tim Scott is a Republican senator. I know some of y'all just dropped off as soon as you saw him. He said, this coon here, he's with the Republican Party. He's a coon, he's a coon. But you know what? The man brought legislation. He brought the Justice Act, right? He brought the Justice Act. And as we go through this, he was willing to bring amendments, as many amendments as the Democrats wanted. Now, how many people have died since George Floyd? All of those cops, if those two bills had merged together, we've talked about this before, if the two bills had merged together, it would have been law. The House would have put the money behind it to give it the functionality, and these officers would have been arrested. But they played politics with you like Teddy Kennedy played politics with Nixon when Nixon gave them 75% of what the Democrats wanted as far as health care was concerned, and was willing to have amendments. Also, go check it. And Teddy Kennedy said no, and it took until Barack Obama. That is a disgrace, and they're playing with you, and it will be another 50 years, and they're playing with you, and this is a black man. I do not go by party. I am not a Dixiecrat coon. I am not a Republican coon. I am not an independent or a nonpartisan coon. I am about American blacks. And when the man came with it, he came with it. And let's listen to this. This is before the vote. This is before the vote, when he thought that he had the votes with the Dixiecrats, old Corey and Kumala, because she's not black, she's Indian. Kumala, you can look at her and tell. Can people wake up? Like, really? Kumala, and Kumala was never with it. Corey said he was, but then he traded off, and they only had 2 Democrats vote for it when it could have went. It's supposed to merge. Learn how we're going to talk about how government works tomorrow. We're going to show you. We're going to break it down on paper so that you will have it. Because just talking about it, talk is cheap. We put it on paper. Paper like the Euro or the European thinks. What's on paper is what it is. So let's go on head on with this.
To say to America, specifically to communities of color, we see you. We hear you. I have experienced your pain. Stopped 18 times in the last 2 decades. In 1 year, 7 times as an elected official.
We gather in honor of those Americans and so many others. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Botham Jean, Terrence Crucher, Jordan Davis, Oscar Grant, Philando Castile, Freddie Gray, Walter Scott, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin.
Now, Oscar Grant was in California. She should know that without reading off paper. This is that symbolic moment. See, we're American blacks and we're not about symbolic moments. Here's a symbolic moment where they kneeled in kente cloth. Like, who? First of all, kente cloth is from Ghana. How many American blacks that were standing up there? Well, a lot of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is a problem, are immigrants themselves. It's a problem, people. A problem. But let's just say that they were American blacks just for argument. How many of those American blacks actually know that they come from Ghana, where kente cloth comes from? Who came up with the idea for the white representatives and the white senators to wear a kente cloth instead of wearing their coat of arms, their colors representing that their people are behind the fight or with the fight, standing shoulder to shoulder with American blacks to see this evil ended? Why would they wear a kente cloth? Huh? Let's continue on.
Any other names?
Okay, wait a minute. All right, let's see.
This moment of national anguish is being transformed into a movement of national action as Americans from across the country peacefully protest to demand an end to injustice. We cannot settle for anything less than transformative structural change, which is why the Justice in Policing Act will remove barriers to prosecuting police misconduct and covering damages by addressing the quality immunity doctrine. It will demilitarize the police by limiting the transfer of military weaponry to state and local police departments. It will combat police brutality by requiring body and dashboard cameras, banning chokeholds, no-knock warrants in drug cases, and end racial profiling. Will finally make lynching, Mr. Hoyer, a federal hate crime. And I salute Chairwoman Bass and Representative Bobby Smith and our 2 distinguished senators, Harrison Booker and others, for their work in helping to pass H.R. 35 this year.
There's a scripture.
So now, the Democrats did symbolic. They passed their bill in the House, right? The Senate is 53 Republicans and the balance are Democrats. And so the Democrats in there scuttled Tim Scott's bill. And this is what he says after they scuttled his bill. Now pay attention. Like I said, I am not about party. I'm about American blacks, right? I'm about where the voice comes from, no matter what party they are. We are about getting something solved. If they had passed that version, the House version passed, it would have came over, they would have merged the bills, and as you will hear, it was set up to give them as many amendments as they needed to make this pass through, but they did not want to. They played politics with American black people's lives, talking about let Biden get it and then we'll do it. That can kick the road. The can kick down the road another 50 years, because if they mess up in 2 years, they'll be talking about, oh well, there's more Republicans right now that are up in the Senate. Come next 2 years, it'll be more Democrats up. Then they say, well, we won't do it until we get this voting done. We won't get it through until we get this voting done. And so it can kick down the road forever. And we got a phone call, so let's bring the phone call in. 702, you're on the line. I believe this is Tracy Latrice. What's going on?
Hey, I have to call in. I was listening to Pelosi, and she stuttered. She did a lot of stuttering. So for me, I'm listening to that, and I'm like, okay, she wasn't sincere. Because I've seen her speak. You know, she practically speaks daily, you know, on a different program. But this is the first time she started stuttering. It was as if she wasn't sincere. And truly, I don't think she was sincere, because when Pelosi and Schumer, when they want to pass a bill, believe me, they get a bill passed. They'll sit down. They have sat down with Republicans together and passed the bill. She had no intention on passing the bill. All of that was just smoke and mirrors. When the kente cloth kneeling down, she was insincere. I just had to call and say that, because it says that people can't see through her. And I'm tired of it. People need to either be more well-read or just stay out of politics and just don't vote, period. If you're not going to educate yourself, and this is a serious matter, right? Educate. If you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, nephews, your neighbors, godkids, whatever. Just stop voting blindly for the Democratic Party or Republican Party, whatever. If neither party has any intention on passing any type of bill that can benefit you and your people, why are you doing this? Just don't vote. Just don't vote.
Thank you. Thank you for calling in. Oh, okay, wait a minute. Let me get you so you can be heard here.
She is absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay. She is absolutely right in what she just said. Because so they're not only so how much longer are y'all? Let me tell you what rape is. I know everybody knows what rape is. If we watch Law and Order, everybody know what rape is. All right, but one of the definitions of rape is to forcibly, basically force a situation that's unwanted. An outrageous violation is one of the definitions. An act or instance of robbing or despoiling or carrying a person away by force, or I would say withholding things that are just due according to the Constitution. Now, either something is wrong here, something is not balancing out. The systems of checks and balances are not balancing out. Now, okay, so we are considered American citizens, okay, with certain inalienable rights that are covered in the Constitution. Yet there's so much that goes on against us that's contrary to what it says. And when it's time to address those things or redress those things, they're not even being proactive in doing so. And not only the subject of reparations, but the bills needed to make for us to have peace, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is being violated in our day-to-day interactions. That when a census worker can't go to a neighborhood and do his job because he's black, when others of us can't do or are hindered from doing things that should be just a normal flow, we can't do it because of some ignorant person, right? So we're sitting here and we're looking at it. We're faced with a situation now. This is the rubber meets the road. Back is against the wall. What you gonna do? It's like you're gonna keep doing the same thing. We had this discussion before, and I've been quite passionate about doing the same thing over and over again and acting like something is not clicking up here. To see the things that are going on and to experience certain things, or maybe it hasn't hit close enough to home for you yet because you haven't been stopped by the police and harassed by the police, because you live in your nice home in the burbs, and because you drive 2 luxury vehicles, and because you have your degrees. By the way, you keep hitting glass ceilings in case you didn't know, because you have your degrees and stuff like that, and things are okay with you. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I got my 6 figures. I got my life insurance policies. I got my investments. I got things are growing. My kids are in college. I'm doing good. I'm rubbing elbows with the elite in my field or whatever. I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I don't have these. And so you sit off from afar and you sit in your living room and you have the TV on and you see shows like this, or you see clips from people being harassed or people being shot or people, and you look at it and you say, oh, what a shame. And in your heart of hearts, deep down inside, in the deepest recesses of your heart, you're saying, you feel some kind of way, but you sitting on that cotton, you sitting on that cushion. And so you don't feel led, or you don't, let's not forget about your religion. God is so good, ain't he? And you sit there and you don't do anything. You don't say anything. You stay out of, you scared to drive through the hood. I'm not saying to go the way of danger if it's dangerous to keep going, but I'm saying you are completely out of touch with the realities that still plague you because you're sitting in a comfort zone. But guess what? When this stuff hit the fan and the denials hit the fan and the repercussions hit the fan, you are going to be included with those of us who sees things a certain way. Else you're going to be kowtowing trying to explain, well, I never said that. I was cool. I was fine. We were fine. We were thankful, boss. We was thankful for what we had, boss. The peace that we had, boss. We was thankful. We didn't get out there with them. Why are you taking ours away? Because the crumbs that was thrown from Massa's table was to create the division. Well, no, I went to school for this. Yep, you still paying those loans, huh? You still enslaved. And so we look at this person, the Tim Scott, the bill was the details of the bill were very good. But then you have these representatives here in this kente cloth that Dee mentioned earlier. I'm very worried when I see a bunch of white people standing up in any kind of garb coming from any place, an African associated with black and is misconstrued or whatever. When I see that, I automatically have a red flag go up. Okay, you're trying to get my confidences by this material. But see, I don't wear that, so you're not getting my confidence. I don't wear that. So, I'm looking at this, and we're being raped, systematically raped, over and over again, systematically raped. Do you know what happens to, and I'm going to get graphic, take the kids out the room. Do you know what happens to the behind hole of somebody who is raped over and over again? They can no longer hold their stool. They can't hold their feces. It just comes out because the muscle and tissue has been torn apart. It takes surgery to correct that. And yet in by way of the Spirit, this is what we are allowing to happen to us and then the further tearing is when we go back and forth and you don't have a vision at all. You can't see it at all. You can't see, or you see it, but you like, yeah, well, some things just is what it is. They are what they are. You know why? That's for you. Because till my dying breath, it's not going to just be that way for me. So, it's that way because we are complacent. We are stagnated. We are desensitized. We've been desensitized in our rectal area. We've been desensitized. And so we keep continually being raped over and over and over again while they keep repackaging slavery. And because some of us have it a little better, nothing's happening. Because those that have it good, they're not stepping forth for reparations. They don't need it. The $300 and some thousand they're talking about giving each person, that's those people's investment yield at the end of every year. They don't need it. And some of us are in that position that may not need that 300 some thousand. But the whole thing is that 300 some thousand is a kick in the teeth too. You owe us trillions of dollars. And that's just the monetary value of what was owed. Let's not talk about all the inventions, all of the things that we use from day to day, all of our intellectual property. Let's not talk about that. You owe us much more than trillions. You owe us everything. And so to hold back anything is a gross raping. A gross rape of any kind is not pleasant. But this is gross imposition. Gross. And so until we move from, okay, we're talking about reparations. Now let's get to the table. We need to go. See, we need to skip some steps in this process because you've been dragging your feet too long. We need to skip the steps. We're not talking now. Come to the table with solutions. Come to the table with, when you step to us, you say, this is what we've begun. And we've come up with a 5-year plan that we start here and we're already doing this. This is in motion. This is phase 2, phase 3, and so on and so forth. And that's it. That's it. Other than that, no reparations, no vote.
And then we get to say, no, well, we have this counter offer because this is what we really want. So go base off of this, and then we can come back and discuss what you're talking about. But let's continue with this because Tim Scott comes up after the vote and he says this. And I don't think people were listening because all they said was, oh, he's a coon, he's a coon. I'm American black. I'm about the black voice. I'm not about the party.
Their work in helping to pass H.R. 35 this year.
There's a scripture in the Bible in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 33, somewhere around verse 6. And that scripture talks about a watchman on a wall. And his job is to simply say, there's danger coming. Very important job. The watchman's job is to simply say, there is danger coming. I had that conversation, as Senator Perdue spoke about, 5 years ago. I didn't find anyone on the other side willing to engage in that conversation then. And here we are 5 years later. There is danger coming. We just lost the vote on the Senate floor to move meaningful police reform forward. Why is that important? It's not important for Republicans or Democrats, frankly. It's important for kids growing up in the same situation that I found myself growing up in several years ago. I wanted to say to people that we're listening, we're seeing you. We hear your concerns. We had a chance to pass really bipartisan legislation. The House priorities and my priorities aligned pretty well. I offered 5 amendments to their first set of requests. Then they said they wanted more, so I offered 20 more amendments and a manager's amendment. Now, what's a manager's amendment? It's a boring term for whatever you want to add in, let's do it. The problem was they weren't looking for the what, they were looking at the who. The challenge came down to a simple thing: me. The Republican Party is not the party they wanted leading this debate. They want Democrats to do it after the election.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps.
That's the Martin Luther King. They tell you 1963. They don't show you 1967, 68. The Martin Luther King that had went through all the paces and said, hey, why are they talking about giving us fucking loans to put us in debt with a $15,000 rebate, but they're giving immigrants TIN number, subsidized housing in the suburbs, the right to vote, free health care, no copay, and the right to vote. Right? And your jobs. You're going to be trained in your jobs. You're going to get the pink slip. This is the same thing. They don't tell you about that Martin Luther King. Wake up, people. And you're voting for that. You're voting for something that was given to people for free. You're going to vote so you can get you a house and go into debt, where they should be giving it to you for free like they do the immigrant, because the immigrant is getting our set-asides. Wake up. This has been another great episode of hashtag TFR Podcast Live OB every weekdays mornings 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We will see you tomorrow with another great episode, and it goes like that.
Here's the thing about your movie, why I made the curator's pick of the Hollywood Fringe Festival. Community, heart, crazy.